Hello and welcome back to Football Daily, where today we're looking at 10 transfers that could flop this season. 10. Matheus CUNHA. Arguably no player representing a relegation-threatened side is under more pressure this season than Matheus CUNHA, with Wolves forced to offload just under £90 million worth of players to stay within FFP limits. The £42 million they were forced to spend on the Brazilian, due to the obligation inserted into his loan from Atletico Madrid, looks very sizable indeed. It's fair to say that if there had been an option rather than an obligation to sign him, Wolves might have not taken up the offer. Across 21 games last term, he managed just 2 goals and 1 assist, as Lopetegui's side scored just 31 league goals, the 5th worst record amongst Europe's 98 top 5 league teams. Luckily for new manager Gary O'Neill, CUNHA has shown glimpses of his RB Leipzig best this term. Across his first 2 games of the season, CUNHA has completed 83% of his passes alongside 8 dribbles and fired off 12 shots, 46% of his tally from 17 league appearances last term. But after a summer of upheaval, Wolves need him to start delivering goals. 9. Tati Castellanos. Lazio have long put off finding a successor to Ciro Immobile, but finally in 2023 they had to take the plunge. After bagging over 20 league goals in 5 of the 6 seasons between 2016 and 2022, the 33-year-old striker dropped to just 12 last term, as well as putting up his worst shot numbers in a decade, and so Lazio took to the market, spending €50 million on New York City FC's Tati Castellanos. Argentinian Castellanos spent 4 years in New York but joined sister club Girona for 22-23, gaining 35 appearances in La Liga, in which time he bagged 13 goals. That's impressive for his first season in a top division, but he also saw lower shot numbers than ever before, lost all his chance creation and progressive passing output, and ranked in the bottom 15% of forwards for pass accuracy. That doesn't seem like the best fit for Sarri ball, and while Castellanos might get better as he adjusts to a more competitive division, he is also 24 and may already be operating at his best. Lazio were lucky to come second in Serie A with only the 8th best numbers in the league, leaving them in a precarious position. A tough landing for Castellanos could send them through the floor. 8. Moises Caicedo. £100 million up front rising to £115 million is an enormous amount of money. The 4th Premier League player to break that barrier in the last 2 years, Chelsea will point to their rival spending, but Caicedo feels like the biggest risk. Grealish had 4 seasons of Premier League football under his belt, whilst Declan Rice and Enzo Fernandez had already shone at a World Cup. Caicedo meanwhile has only started 42 Premier League games. The promise though is immense. It's rare to find a player that averages over 4.3 defensive actions per 90, whilst also completing close to 90% of his passes. And on paper he should be the perfect foil to Enzo Fernandez, who aside from a penalty miss against West Ham, has started the season exceptionally, completing 35 progressive passes in 2 games, 14 more than next best Estupiñán. But with André Santos, Romeo Lavia and Leslie Ugochukwu signed this summer, could Chelsea have used that £100 million to bolster their front line, which has scored 40 goals in its last 40 games? It's fair to say he hasn't got off to the best of starts. A 29-minute debut against West Ham saw him misplace 6 passes and give away a penalty. If Chelsea fall short of the top 4, this transfer is going to be under a lot of scrutiny. 7. Guglielmo Vicario. At €20 million, only 11 goalkeepers have cost more than Guglielmo Vicario in Premier League history, and unless you're a regular watcher of mid-table Italian football, you'd be forgiven for wondering at what expense. The 26-year-old is now at the 7th club of his career, and just 73 of his 215 league games prior to joining Tottenham came in a top division, making him a risky option to replace Hugo Lloris. For all his faults, a man who made nearly 450 appearances for Spurs. Vicario is not yet a full international, and while he had a solid campaign last year, saving his team roughly 3 goals versus expected goals across the season, that was a significant advance on his previous year, where his save percentage ranked 11th of 23 regular Serie A stoppers. It's also unclear how well he can dominate his area, sitting in the bottom half of European goalkeepers for claiming crosses and sweeping up behind his defence, 2 abilities likely to be tested against Premier League attacks. With Angian and Kane out, it's been a summer of turmoil for Tottenham. If Vicario doesn't settle, the turbulence could last even longer. 6. Calvin Bassey. A physical left-footed central defender for under £25 million should feel like a slam dunk for a Premier League side, but Calvin Bassey's arrival at Fulham raises questions rather than answering them. The Nigerian had a mixed campaign at Ajax after his €23 million switch from Rangers, with the club's former manager Ard de Mos labelling the signing the largest wrong turn in the history of European football, and Wesley Sneijder advising Ajax to hand him a one-way ticket back to Scotland. Somehow the Amsterdam side still got their money back from the Cottagers, and to be fair to Bassey, his stats were good in the Netherlands. though they always are for Ajax players. BASSEY made the top 4% of defenders for progressive passes and top 2% for progressive carries, but he was still only at half the output of teammate Jurrien Timber, whilst defensively, he completed fewer of his attempted tackles than Timber, Daley Blind or Divan Wrench, worrying given the attackers he'll face in the Prem. While Fulham might have only allowed 53 goals last year, that came from 64 XG against. Fifth from bottom, fans will hope that both BASSEY and the rest of the backline have another level to go to. 5. Kai Havertz. Having contributed just 26 goals and assists in 90 league games across 3 seasons in West London, the majority of Chelsea fans were losing faith with 2021 Champions League final hero Kai Havertz by the start of this summer. So when Mikel Arteta's Arsenal, who finished 10 places and 40 points ahead of the Blues last season, offered £65 million for his services, a £3 million profit on the initial fee Chelsea paid for him back in 2020, most neutrals were left perplexed. Whilst Havertz does have some obvious qualities, namely defensive work rate, an ability to find space between the lines and an excellent leap, with the German winning 57% of his aerial duels last term, the best record of any forward in the division, the fact he's never shown the ruthlessness required to lead the line for an elite side, underperforming his XG by a league-high 5.7, made this transfer hard to decipher. But capable of playing as a 9, 10 or 8, Arteta appears to value his versatility. Get off to a slow start though, and the vultures will circle. 4. Sandro Tonali. Sandro Tonali was excellent in Newcastle's comprehensive opening day victory over Aston Villa, and for a reported £55 million fee, less than half what Chelsea could end up paying for CAICEDO, the 14-capped Italian's fee no longer looks inflated. But could Newcastle have spent that money more effectively? We think so. Whilst Tonali's energy and proficiency over set pieces will be assets to Eddie Howe, given his fairly average passing attributes, completing just 4.8 progressive passes per 90 last term, just 0.4 more than Joe Willock, and misplacing 14% of short passes, good enough for 11th in Newcastle's squad last term, we think they'd have been better served signing a more creative midfielder, someone like James Maddison. With the now departed Alan Saint-Maximin and Kieran Trippier the only players to average more than 0.25 expected assists per 90, we think the Magpies might struggle to break down set-up defences. Having already created 8 chances this term, a figure topped only by Foden and Matoma, Maddison could have been a real difference maker for the Mags. 3. Robert Sanchez. Imagine hearing back in May that at the start of the new season, Kepa would be Real Madrid's goalkeeper for 23-24, Edouard Mendy would be playing in Saudi Arabia, and Robert Sanchez Chelsea's new number 1. You'd have thought the world had gone mad. Arguably Sanchez's side of the story is the craziest. Kepa had long been admired by Real Madrid, and Mendy had very few options in Europe, but the former Brighton man's career was at a complete crossroads. Having played just one of the Seagulls' final 12 league games as De Zerbi favoured former Sunderland flop Jason Steele, Sanchez was not a name on everyone's lips going into this summer. Chelsea watched and waited as Andre Onana sealed a move to Man United, and David Raya was linked with a number of clubs before joining Arsenal initially on loan, until finally agreeing a deal that could rise to £25 million for Sanchez. With the Spaniard coming off a campaign in which his save percentage dropped to just 65%, 17th out of the 23 goalkeepers to feature in the league last season, and 8% lower than Kepa, the potential for Chelsea to have somehow downgraded from Kepa is there for all to see. 2. Pau Torres. Talk about a baptism of fire. Expected to be eased into life in the Premier League following a £31.5 million move from Villarreal, Pau Torres was thrust into the limelight just 31 minutes into game week 1 when Tyrone Mings was stretchered off with a significant knee injury. With Aston Villa 2-1 down in front of a fervent St James's Park crowd buoyed by the energetic no-holds-barred display from their team, this was a sink or swim moment, and unfortunately Torres drowned. The Spaniard looked like exactly what he was, a player not used to his surroundings or teammates, as he was routinely caught out of position as the Magpies scored 3 in the final 32 minutes. But if you think we are judging Torres solely off one game, you are mistaken. Whilst the 23-capped international has proven himself to be an excellent progressive passer, completing the second most out of any defender in that league last term, he does lack physicality, winning just 55% of his aerial duels in 22-23, 17% less than Mings' tally. With Diego Carlos not long back from an Achilles injury, Emery needs Torres to get up to speed fast to keep their ambitious aims for the season alive. 1. Rasmus Højlund. Man United need a lot from Rasmus Højlund this season. With Martial permanently injured, Garnacho in development, and Antony and Sancho yet to find consistency, Ten Hag desperately needs the Dane to ease the burden on Marcus Rashford, who was directly involved in 38% of their league goals last term. The Red Devils only scored 58, not only 36 behind Man City but also 30 fewer than Arsenal. To bridge the gap and challenge, United need to find another source of goals. Højlund could well be that guy. 6'3" and capable of running an 11-second 100 metres, he's got the raw ingredients. but having only ever played 1,836 league minutes in a top 5 league, with 12 appearances off the bench, he's unlikely to hit the ground running, especially having arrived with a stress fracture in his back. Having been signed for €75 million, Højlund is now Man United's 7th most expensive player ever, sandwiched between Angel Di Maria and Casemiro, who had won 6 Champions Leagues between them prior to arriving at Old Trafford. To put it simply, it's a staggering fee for someone with 9 goals in a top 5 league and less than 100 games of senior football under his belt. Factor in the pressure of representing the most talked about club in English football, and the flop potential is huge. So guys, that was 10 transfers that could flop this season. What did you guys think of the list? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and subscribe to Football Daily while you're at it, and I'll catch you next time.